this is Jose Figueroa with an approved workman where we are rightly dividing the word of truth. Welcome to another week of Bible study. I am glad that you're here as we open up God's Word one more time. Our current series is Rebuilding the Covenant Community, a study of the book of Nehemiah. If you're new to this Bible teaching ministry, here's how you can learn more about our work. You can go to our website, www.anapprovedworkman.org. That's anapprovedworkman altogether.org. You can learn about the purpose for this ministry, our approach to Bible study, and review our statement of faith. You can listen to previous episodes of our current series or any episodes from previous series. On the website, you can also subscribe to the podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Amazon Music, as well as other podcast directories. You can connect with us on social media, on Instagram at @anapprovedworkman, on Pinterest, pinterest.com/anapprovedworkman, and on Facebook, our Facebook page, facebook.com/anapprovedworkman215. Finally, there are also video versions of our Bible study lessons. They're available on YouTube at youtube.com/@anapprovedworkman215. That's our handle. And on Rumble, rumble.com/c/anapprovedworkman. You can subscribe to those video channels and make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Today, we're in lesson number 11 in the series Rebuilding the Covenant Community from the book of Nehemiah. This is volume number 2 of our series, After the Exile, a study of Ezra-Nehemiah and Esther. The lesson is titled Organize for Life Under God, Part 1. Our focus passage is Nehemiah chapter 11, verse 1, all the way to Nehemiah chapter 12, verse 26. So please find your way in your Bible to that passage. In chapters 11 and 12, we see the Jewish exiles settle in Jerusalem, dedicate the wall, and establish temple procedures. Can I take you at your word? Do you ever make promises to others or to yourself? More importantly, if you make a promise, are you able to keep it? In other words, can your word be trusted? Let's look at 3 areas, for example. First, what employees are keeping their agreements with companies? In 2022, over 4 million Americans quit their jobs each month. This was called the Great Resignation. Right after the COVID pandemic of 2020 and 2021, I think this is one of the most impactful effects of that pandemic and everything that went along with it. But look at it. You entered voluntarily into an agreement with a company to work for them. And then you did not honor that agreement when something else came along. Well, it's true. It happens, right? The company sometimes they don't hold their agreements and they fire or lay off people. So it goes both ways, but let's look at it from our perspective as employees. What about when we borrow money? As of the third quarter, again of 2022, Americans owed around $210 billion in loans. Of those loans, 4% or around $8.4 billion were 60 or more days past the due date for the next payment. Again, no one forces us to borrow money. We make that decision. And there is, when we take the loan, we sign a paper that says these are the terms and this is when we will pay back. And then finally, let's talk about marriage. Weddings are still a big business. However, we're not keeping our commitments to each other. Again, data from 2022, the divorce rate was expected to be at least 44.2%, so almost 1 out of every 2 marriages end in divorce. Now, of course, there are multiple reasons that could cause any individual to fail to keep their promises to an employer, to a lender, and to a marriage partner. I'm not trying to judge each situation today. The issue is this: we humans cannot be counted to keep our promises. These are all examples of agreements or covenants, if you will. Basically, we're not capable of doing that on a consistent basis. we cannot be counted to be 100% faithful to our promises. As we get closer to finishing our study in Nehemiah, we will see that the Jewish exiles also faced this challenge of keeping their word, their commitment to the Lord. In our previous episode, we concluded our teaching on Nehemiah 9 and 10, a study we call Moving Forward with God. In these two chapters, we observe the covenant community taking the necessary steps to move forward in their relationship with Yahweh. We saw them entering into a time of fasting, sorrow, repentance, prayer, worship, and recommitment. In our lessons, we covered two key aspects of our relationship with God: confession and commitment. After confessing their sins and the righteousness of God's judgment on them, the Jewish exiles renewed their covenant with Yahweh. We should remember that moving forward with God requires our acknowledgement of His enduring greatness and goodness and our wholehearted commitment to Him. Let's review the principles and applications from our study of Nehemiah 9 and 10. First, our first division, moving forward with God, acknowledge His faithfulness. Chapter 9, verses 1 through 31. Our principle, God's covenant people prosper because of His faithfulness and steadfast love. God's covenant people prosper because of His faithfulness and steadfast love. How has God demonstrated His faithfulness to me in my life? What are those spiritual markers where He has shown me His steadfast love and compassion? Our second division was moving forward with God, acknowledge your unfaithfulness. Chapter 9, verses 32 through 37. Our principle, God's covenant people move forward with Him through confession and repentance. God's covenant people move forward with Him through confession and repentance. As a way of application, we ask, how am I failing to properly respond to God's steadfast love for me? What do I need to confess in my life so I can move forward with God? Our third and final division was moving forward with God, commit to Him. Nehemiah 9:38 through 10:39. Our principle, God's covenant people move forward with Him by full-hearted commitment. God's covenant people move forward with Him by full-hearted commitment. How ready am I to commit myself wholeheartedly to the Lord? What commitments to the Lord am I making right now? And what specific actions am I taking to honor those commitments? If you missed our previous episode, I encourage you to either listen to the podcast or watch the video version of that lesson on YouTube or Rumble. In today's lesson, we begin our look at the last section of the book of Nehemiah, namely chapters 11 through 13. As a way of reminder, let's see what happened at the end of Nehemiah 10. The Jewish exiles made a series of commitments to the Lord as they renewed their covenant with Him. Chapter 10, verses 29 and 30, one of those commitments, no mixed marriages. They would not give their sons or daughters to marriage with the peoples of the land. Nehemiah 10:31, they committed to honor the Sabbath. They would not buy from foreigners wares or grain on the Sabbath day or on any other holiday. They would also forego the crops every seventh year, providing a Sabbath rest for the land, and would also forgive every debt. Verses 32 and 34, chapter 10, they also committed to the required offerings and contributions for temple operations. And then in verses 35 to 39, they would also bring the first of their dough, their contributions, the fruit of every tree, the new wine and the oil to the priests at the chambers of the temple, and the tithe of the ground to the Levites. They committed themselves not neglect the temple of the Lord. Now, remember, chapter 10, they signed a document, but is that enough, right? It's like signing an agreement on a loan or getting a marriage license or signing an agreement of employment with a company. You make the commitment, you sign the document. So we make all kinds of commitments all the time, and then somehow we don't honor them. The question is, How will the Jewish exiles follow through their commitments? Remember, they were well intentioned, but their own history suggests that good intentions are not sufficient. In Deuteronomy 31, Moses hears from the Lord that once you die, these people will play the harlot. Joshua, in Joshua 24, in his farewell speech, told them, you cannot make this commitment. You cannot keep this commitment you're making today. So, we must purposely set out to do what we say we would do. It does not happen by accident, but again, there is a challenge. So, as we look at these three concluding chapters, we're going to see several lists of names of people involved in this commitment and actions. So, why are these names here? I mean, you may read through the chapters and say, this is a long list of names. Why are we going through this? What is the point of this? Why are these names important to God? And bigger question is, why are they important to you and to me? Well, we have them in the Holy Scriptures, so God must have something to tell us about it. In his commentary on Ezra-Nehemiah-Esther, Dr. Mervyn Brenneman speaks on how the focus on these chapters is on the community as a whole. He says, quote, Chapter 11 takes up the thought of 7, 1 through 5, and chapter 7, verse 73. In the Nehemiah memoirs, this material probably followed immediately after that of chapter 7. The new arrangement follows a logical order: the construction of the walls in chapters 1 through 6, the spiritual revival in chapters 8 through 10, and the organization of the community in chapters 11 through 13. This latter section emphasizes the representation of the different families and the nature of authority in the organization. Especially here, the focus is on the people rather than on any single character. End quote. Let's also hear from Dr. Derek Kidner from his commentary on Ezra and Nehemiah on how these carefully laid out chapters speak of Israel's purpose as God's covenant community. He says, quote, This is no rabble of refugees settling down anywhere. They have the dignity of order and of non-relationships. Above all, of their calling to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Exodus 19:6. We learn from 1 Chronicles 9 and verse 3, in a chapter which fills out the present list with further names and with glimpses of the temple servants at their work, that Israelites of other tribes than the three mentioned here took up residence in Jerusalem. But these three, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, were the nucleus. These had stayed with David's heirs to form the kingdom of Judah when the rest had broken away. Now, the future of Israel lay with them and with those who had rallied to them from the other tribes. End quote. Here's our lesson outline for our teaching from Nehemiah chapters 11 and 12, organized for life under God. We have two divisions. First, the organization of the people, chapter 11, verse 1 through chapter 12, verse 26. Then we will look at the dedication of the wall, chapter 12, verses 27 through 47. Our goal for the teaching from these two chapters is this: to encourage believers to remember that living according to God's ways requires wholehearted commitment and intentionality. Again, the lesson goal for the teaching from Nehemiah 11 and 12 is this: to encourage believers to remember that living according to God's ways requires wholehearted commitment and intentionality. In today's lesson, we will only cover our first division, the organization of the people, chapter 11, verse 1 through chapter 12, verse 26. So let's get started with that first division. So as I mentioned, there is a lot of names in these chapters, and you might think, well, it's so tedious to read through all of that. But the Lord purposely decided to keep these names in the list, in the scripture. So we're going to honor that decision, and we're going to read through the entirety of all those names as they're presented to us. So, chapter 11, verse 1. Now the leaders of the people lived in Jerusalem, But the rest of the people cast lots to bring 1 out of 10 to live in Jerusalem, the holy city, while 9 tenths remain in the other cities. And the people blessed all the men who volunteered to live in Jerusalem. Now these are the heads of the provinces who lived in Jerusalem, but in the cities of Judah each lived on his own property in their cities: the Israelites, the priests, the Levites, the temple servants, and the descendants of Solomon's servants. Some of the sons of Judah and some of the sons of Benjamin lived in Jerusalem. From the sons of Judah, Attaiah, the son of Uzziah, the son of Zechariah, the son of Amariah, the son of Shephatiah, the son of Mahalalel, of the sons of Perez. And Masaiah, the son of Baruch, the son of Kolhose, the son of Hasaiah, the son of Adaiah, the son of Joarib, the son of Zechariah, the son of the Shilonite. All the sons of Perez who lived in Jerusalem were 468 able men. Verse 7. Now these are the sons of Benjamin: Salu, the son of Meshullam, the son of Joed, the son of Pedaiah, the son of Kolaiah, the son of Maaseiah, the son of Ithiel, the son of Jeshaiah. And after him Gabai and Salai, 928. Joel, the son of Sikri, was their overseer, and Judah, the son of Hasenuah, was second in command of the city. From the priests, Jedaiah, the son of Joarib, Jashin; Seraiah, the son of Hilkiah, the son of Meshullam, the son of Zadok; the son of Meraioth, the son of Ahitub, the overseer of the house of God; and their kinsmen, who did the work of the temple, 822; and Adaiah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Pelaliah, the son of Amsi, the son of Zechariah, the son of Pashur, the son of Malchijah; and his kinsmen, heads of fathers' households, 242; and Amashai, the son of Azarel, the son of Azai, the son of Meshillemoth, the son of Emer, and their brothers, valiant warriors, 128; and their overseer was Sabil, the son of Hagedolim. Verse 15. Now from the Levites, Shemaiah, the son of Hashub, the son of Azrikam, the son of Hashabiah, the son of Buni, and Shabbathai and Josabah, from the leaders of the Levites, who were in charge of the outside work of the house of God. And Mathaniah, the son of Micah, the son of Sabdi, the son of Asaph, who was the leader in beginning the thanksgiving at prayer, and Bakbukiah, the second among his kinsmen, and Abda, the son of Shammua, the son of Galal, the son of Jeduthun. All the Levites in the holy city were 284. Also the gatekeepers, Akub, Talmon, and their kinsmen, who kept watch at the gates, were 172. Verse 20. The rest of Israel, of the priests and of the Levites, were all in the cities of Judah, each on his own inheritance. But the temple servants were living in Ophel, and Siha and Gishpa were in charge of the temple servants. Now the overseer of the Levites in Jerusalem was Uzzi, the son of Bani, the son of Hashabiah, the son of Mattaniah, the son of Micah, from the sons of Asaph, who were the singers for the service of the house of God. For there was a commandment from the king concerning them, and a royal command for the singers day by day. And Petaiah, the son of Meshezabel, of the sons of Zerah, the sons of Judah, was the king's representative for every matter concerning the people. Verse 25. Now as for the villages with their fields, some of the sons of Judah live in Kiriath Arba and its towns, in Dibon and its towns, and in Jekbasil and its villages, and in Jeshua, in Moladah and Beth Pelet, and in Hazar Shual, in Beersheba and its towns, and in Siklag, in Mekona and in its towns, and in En-Rimon, in Zorah and in Jarmuth, Sanoah, Adulam and their villages, Lachish and its fields, Azekah and its towns. So they came from Beersheba as far as the valley of Hinnom. The sons of Benjamin also lived from Geba onward, at Michmash and Ijah, at Bethel and its towns, at Anatoth, Nob, Ananiah, Hazor, Ramah, Gittaim, Hadid, Seboim, Nebalad, Lod, and Ono, the valley of craftsmen. And from the Levites, some divisions in Judah belong to Benjamin. That's Nehemiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 36. Now let's move ahead to chapter 12, verse 1. Now these are the priests and the Levites who came up with Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel and Jeshua, Seraiah, Jeremiah, Ezra, Amariah, Maluk, Hattush, Shechaniah, Rehum, Meremoth, Edo, Ginnetoy, Abijah, Mijamin, Maadiah, Bilgah, Shemaiah, and Joarib, Jedaiah, Salu, Amok, Hilkiah, and Jedaiah. These were the heads of the priests and their kinsmen in the days of Jeshua. Verse 8. And the Levites were Jeshua, Binui, Kadmiel, Sherebiah, Judah, and Mathaniah, who was in charge of the songs of thanksgiving, he and his brothers. Also, Babukiah and Uni, their brothers, stood opposite them in their service divisions. Jeshua fathered Joiakim, Joiakim fathered Eliashib, and Eliashib fathered Joiada. Joiada fathered Jonathan, and Jonathan fathered Jaddua. Now in the days of Joiakim the priest, the heads of the fathers' households were of Seraiah, Meraiah, of Jeremiah, Hananiah, of Ezra, Meshullam, of Amariah, Jehonanan, of Maluchi, Jonathan, of Shebaniah, Joseph, of Harim, Adna, of Meraioth, Helkai, of Edo, Zechariah, of Ginnethon, Meshullam, of Abijah, Sikri, of Miniamin, of Moadiah, Piltai, of Bilgah, Shamya, of Shemaiah, Jehonathan, of Joarib, Mattenai, of Jedaiah, Uzi, of Salai, Kalai, of Amok, Eber, of Hilkiah, Hashabiah, and of Jedaiah, Nethanel. Verse 22. As for the Levites, the heads of fathers' households were registered in the days of Eliashib, Joiada, and Johanan, and Jaddua. So were the priests in the reign of Darius the Persian. The sons of Levi, the heads of fathers' households, were registered in the book of the Chronicles up to the days of Johanan, the son of Eliashib. And the heads of the Levites were Hashabiah, Sherebiah, and Jeshua, the son of Kadmiel, with their brothers opposite them to praise and give thanks, as prescribed by David, the man of God, division corresponding to division. Mathaniah, Bakbukiah, Obadiah, Meshullam, Talmon, and Akub were gatekeepers, keeping watch at the storerooms of the gates. These men served in the days of Joiakim, the son of Jeshua, the son of Josadak, and in the days of Nehemiah the governor, and Ezra the priest and scribe. That's Nehemiah chapter 11, verse 1, all the way to chapter 12, verse 26. Now let's get started going through this division by looking at verses 1 through 19 of chapter 11, the leaders and the people living in Jerusalem. Verses 1 and 2, we're told that the leaders of the people live in Jerusalem. That makes sense. As the center of operation, the center of life, the center of worship, so it makes sense that the leaders of the people live there. However, we're also told that 9/10 of the families lived outside of Jerusalem, because the people had cast out laws so that 1 out of every 10 families would move to Jerusalem. The people, the rest of the people, blessed those who volunteered to live in the city. Why is that? Well, living in the city requires sacrifice. The city needed people to become effective and vibrant. But you don't have crops or flocks to feed your family. You depend on what becomes available through commerce. And rebuilding in a new city can be tough, especially when conditions are not ideal. So that's why the rest of the people, blessed those families that agreed to move to the city. It was a sacrificial move to the benefit of the entire community. In his commentary on Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, Dr. J. Vernon McGee speaks on the willing submission of this group. He says, quote, "These people were willing to do whatever God wanted them to do." Note the few verses from this chapter. There were many people who wanted to move out to the suburban areas even in that day. But for those who were willing to dwell in Jerusalem, they just thanked God for them. These folk are stranger to us, but God knew each one, and He records their names because they had willing hearts. End quote. Moving ahead to verse 3, and now we get the list of the heads of the provinces of those who live in Jerusalem, right? So these are the leaders. And as we saw, the rest of the people lived in their own properties and the cities. That included the rest of the Israelites. There were some priests, some Levites, temple servants, and descendants of Solomon's servants. So not everybody lived in the city, even they had responsibilities in the temple. They were basically living in their own locations and then coming into the city for work. In verses 4 through 6, we get the list of the descendants of Judah and Benjamin who lived in Jerusalem. Remember, these are the two southern tribes that remained loyal to David's dynasty after the kingdom was divided during the days of Rehoboam due to Solomon's sin. So we get the list of the names of the descendants of Judah. It's a long list. We're told that as you look at this list, the descendants of the sons of Perez who live in Jerusalem, we're looking at 468 valiant men. These men were ready to provide security for the city. Remember, the exiles are back in the land, but there is opposition. They were surrounded by foreigners. There are people who really don't are for the well-being of the Jews. Their temple rebuilding efforts were thwarted. Their wall rebuilding efforts were thwarted. Nehemiah was constantly opposed. So you need security. And these men from the tribe of Judah are called valiant men. Your translation might say able men, but the tense here is that these men were ready to defend the city. In verses 7 through 9, we see that the descendants of Benjamin were listed, and then we close with who are the leaders. You have Joel, the son of Sikri, who's the overseer, and then Judah, the son of Hasenuah, who is the second in command. So you look at this group, this is the civil leadership for the city. In verses 10 through 14, we move on to the religious leadership. We get the names of the priests first. And then we're told that the total number of them are 822. Then you look at a next list of names. You have heads of the fathers' households as 242. And then you have another group of name, 128. So you have, in total, when you look at the priests, you have 1,192 people, men listed. Then in verses 15 through 18, we take a look at the list of the names of the Levites. So it's a long list that includes, remember, the Levites had multiple responsibilities for the temple operations. They had teaching responsibilities. They were there to support the priestly class, the high priest, the descendants of Aaron. But also the Levites had work to do and teaching work to do, but they're also heavily involved in the worship services, in the singing and in the playing of instruments. So you have then some of the names. You have some descendants of Asaph, the man who was one of the leaders of worship in the days of David. So when you look at the group of Levites, you had 284. So again, you have here the leaders, the civil leaders, the people providing security. You have the priestly class, and then you have the Levites. And these names, again, are listed because they're important to God. These are the people who made a commitment to be at their post and do what they were supposed to do for the community. In his commentary on Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, Dr. Mervyn Brenneman reflects on the importance of organization for worship that honors God. He says, quote, "The outside work of the house of God," verse 16, reminds us of the many different kinds of work committed to the Levites. Here, it may include gathering and storing provisions for the temple and caring for the temple building and property. Verse 17 reminds us that the purpose of all these different jobs was to worship God. The importance of the worship service is again emphasized. Since David's time, some of the Levites were especially designated as singers. This was continued even in the post-exilic community. End quote. So again, You're rebuilding life in Jerusalem. You're rebuilding life around the temple. Worship is central to the life of the Jewish exiles. So it's important. And you know, notice that they go all the way back to the way David, the great songwriter, the great poet of Israel, the king, organized the temple service, the singers, for the purpose of doing worship of Yahweh properly. Finally, if you look at verse 19 of this chapter, we have the gatekeeper. So again, providing security. Akub, Talmon, and their kinsmen, and their total number was 172. Now let's move ahead to verses 20 through 36 of chapter 11 and see the rest of the people living around Jerusalem. So they're listed there, the rest of the people, the priests and the Levites. They were all living in the cities of Judah according to their inheritance. We're told that the temple servants were living in Ophel, and Siha and Gizpah were in charge of the temple servants. So again, people are living everywhere. They still have work to do in the temple. They have leadership over top of them. We're told in verses 22 and 24, we take a look at the overseer of the Levites in Jerusalem was a man named Uzi, the son of Bani. And then you also have people, descendants from Asaph again, the singers for the service of the house of God. And again, it says that this was by command from the king concerning them daily. That probably refers to the fact that the Persian king, the Persian ruler, decided that was their custom, that was their approach to make sure that the people of their that were subjects to them that returned to their lands observe the religious ordinances of their deities, right? So they wanted peace, they wanted stability. The best way they thought they could do that is to enable them, even though they were under the rulership of Persia, that they could observe and should observe their religious rituals, their religious faith, observe that. So it's a form of freedom of exercising, freedom of worship that we have here in the United States, to make sure that everybody can worship according to the way they see. And basically that was a command that, again, that ensured the peace. And there was a man who was a representative in these matters before the king. So again, the Persian Empire, very flexible, allowing some sort of self-rule, especially in religious matters, to all their subjects, and that included the Jews at this time, those living in the province of Judah. In verses 25 through 30, we get the list of the cities and the villages where the descendants of Judah are living at this time. You see some names that are familiar to us: Kiriath Arba or Hebron. You also have Siklag, which was a city of David when he was running away from Saul and made his living in the area of the Philistines. You have a famous city, Lachish, which was attacked constantly. So again, you see some of these cities, and you see that they're told us that the descendants of Judah camped, excuse me, all the way from Beersheba as far as the valley of Hinnom. Then in verses 31 and 36, we get the list of the descendants of Benjamin leaving in the from Gibeah onward, and also we see some famous cities like Anatoth and Ramah and others and that. So, and then we're told that the Levites who were living in these cities, remember the Levites had temple responsibilities, but the Levites, their inheritance, they didn't have a land inheritance. The Lord was their inheritance when the tribes divided the land. But the Levites were supposed to be spread out in refuge cities and in cities where the other 11 tribes were, because they had responsibilities for teaching the people the commandments of God. So this same thing is happening here. You have the Levites spread out between the Judah and Benjamin. Dr. Kidner speaks again on how these exiles resettled the surrounding villages according to their ancestral tribal inheritance. Very interesting. He says, quote, "As a province of the Persian Empire, the whole territory governed by Nehemiah was called Yehud or Judah, and was bounded on the north by the province of Samaria and on the south by Idumea or Edom. But historically, the part of it which ran from Jerusalem northward that had belonged to Benjamin. So the two tribes occupied their respective territories, defined briefly in verses 30b and 31a, with Levi distributed among them both. Also, as we learn For example, 1 Chronicles 9:3, with certain survivors of the northern tribes. But as citizens of the one empire, these people were free to settle where they would, provided they kept the peace. Therefore, what is shown here is a return of families to their native parts wherever possible, not an attempted expansion of the province. End quote. So, even though they were living in cities that were not technically part of the province of Judah, because of the flexibility provided to them by the Persian Empire, they were free to settle anywhere in that area as long as they made no trouble. Remember, they're back in the land, but they're subjects of the Persian Empire. That was part of the cost of the exile, part of the cost of their disobedience to the covenant with Yahweh. So they're back, but again, it's a different position than from when they first came into the land under the leadership of Joshua. In his Bible commentary, Dr. Tony Evans speaks on the highly organized and purposeful list we see in these verses. He says, quote, there is a high degree of organization in this list as well as lots of detail. There were heads of the province, people who did the work at the temple, people who supervised the work outside the house of God, and someone who began the thanksgiving in prayer. In your house, your business, or your world's Sikh organization, God does not work in the midst of disorder. End quote. And I couldn't agree with Dr. Evans anymore. Organization is key because we're doing work for the Lord, and anything we're doing, all things to the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10:31. We should do it with excellence. We should do it with organization, with purpose, with intentionality. Now we move to chapter 12 and we see the registry of the Levites and priests in verses 1 through 26. So we're turning now to the religious leadership of the people. This is a group that will provide guidance and teaching in the ways of God. They were charged with the worship activities in the temple and in the discipleship of the people. In his Bible commentary, Dr. John MacArthur provides us with a great context for this list of important names that follows. He says, quote, originally there were 24 courses of priests, each course serving in the temple for a period of 2 weeks per year or for 1 month biannually, as we see in 1 Chronicles 24, verses 1 through 20. Only 4 of those houses returned from Babylon, but these were divided into 24 courses, of which 22 are listed here. This is then a selective rather than exhaustive listing of priests and Levites from the time of Zerubbabel and Jeshua, recording the key priests and Levites through 3 generations of high priests. Number 1, Jeshua, who came in the initial return with Zerubbabel back in 538 BC. That's verses 1 through 11. Joachim, the son of Jeshua, in verses 12 through 22. Eliashib, the son of Joachim, in verses 22 and 23. And number 4, a miscellaneous group who served in the days of Joachim, verses 24 to 26. End quote. So again, this is a long list of names, but this information from Dr. MacArthur provides great insights and allow us to look at this chapter for the proper context. So now let's wrap this up in verses 1 through 7. Again, we see that list of priests and Levites who returned with Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua. Verses 8 and 9, we see the Levites, Jeshua, Binnui, Kadmiel, Sherebiah, Judah, and Mattaniah, who was in charge of the song Thanksgiving, and his brother were working with him. Verses 10 through 11, we see the list of the members of the high priestly family, that again, 3 generations of high priests, again, to provide that overall context as Dr. MacArthur shared. And then verses 12 to 21, you see the list of the heads of the fathers' households, those courses of priests, those divisions that did serve in the temple every 2 weeks or once a month, depending on the year. So again, very detailed list, very important, providing context, providing that transparency, that traceability of who's supposed to be leading the worship services, because how important that is to life under God. Worship in God's way, extremely important. Then we're told in verses 22 and 23 that, we get the list of the Levites, the heads of their fathers' households, that they kept those names in the days of Eliashib, Joiada, and Johanan. and Jadwa, who served as high priest. There was also a record of the priest that was kept during the reign of Darius the Persian. That's all the way Darius II. He ruled between 423 and 404 BC. We get the list of the sons of Levi, the fact that they were registered in the book of the Chronicles, not the first and second Chronicles from the canon, but a different book where you kept details of who was in charge and serving in different roles. Verses 24 and 26, we get the heads of the Levites listed, and again they're organized to give praise and thanks according to the way David organized the Levites for worship services in the temple. Again, they're making that continuity, that connection back to the days of David when things were being done in the proper way. So we were told that these men served in the days of Joachim, the son of Jeshua, the son of Josadak, and in the days of Nehemiah. So it kind of brings us to the days of Nehemiah, the governor, and Ezra. So this present moment where we are about to dedicate the wall and about to do some other things. So again, that's the purpose of this list, is to show us that our life under God requires both an individual commitment, sacrifice it, like in the case of the people who volunteered to live in Jerusalem, and then requires community. You're doing things for the community. We have people, everybody has a role. You have the people, you have the priests, you have the Levites, you have the civil leaders. Everybody has a role in the benefit, in the welfare of the community, of God's covenant community. So when you look at that in our time in the church, we're not to be lone rangers. We have to be part of a community of faith, a covenant community that seeks to help one another. So we need to take our position and stand side by side with each other as we do work for God's glory and the good of others, both believers and unbelievers. And Dr. Brenneman reflects on this important principle of leadership and service as we close this first division. He says, quote, "Not only were the outstanding leaders necessary for God's work in the community, the singers, the gatekeepers, and the Levites were all indispensable. In God's work, each believer is important. According to Ephesians 4, the Lord has given gifts to each one, and the whole body grows together when all these gifts are used and coordinated in God's work. In a time when self-centeredness seems to dominate Western lifestyles, the Word of God calls us to work and live together as a community, to be dependent upon one another, and to help one another in achieving the task God has set before us." End quote. Again, wholehearted agreement with Dr. Brenneman's view on this. Well, that is the end of this first division from Nehemiah 11 and 12. What's our principle? Life under God requires sacrifice and commitment for the good of others. Life under God requires sacrifice and commitment for the good of others. Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility consider one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others. Philippians 2, 3, and 4. What am I willing to sacrifice for the good of my covenant community? How willing am I to be counted and to commit to carry out what the Lord has called me to do for Him? What am I doing to understand what He has equipped me to do for the kingdom? This concludes part 1 of our teaching from Nehemiah 11 and 12. Thank you for being here today. Next time we will focus on our second division, the dedication of the wall, from verses 27 through 47 of chapter 12. It's a beautiful ceremony, so I'm excited to kind of get into the details of it. Until then, this is Jose Figueroa for an approved workman, where we are rightly dividing the word of truth. May God richly bless you.